Okay, we're continuing with this book here, The British Imagination by Watson. This is like part 4. And we're going to talk a little bit about the development of the British novel. One of the first famous British novels was Pamela by Samuel Richardson. And it was all about how this young servant lady had kept her chastity and her good morals. And when the rich landowner felt that he couldn't get her in his bed just from seducing her, he had to marry her. And so that was a victory for her. And then Henry Fielding, a year later, wrote a spoof on that, a parody, saying that she was really pretty promiscuous and loose and sinful. And he's got like a Hogarth painting on the cover of the book here. And here's some quotes. Well, one quote by Samuel Richardson: "Where words are restrained, the eyes often talk a great deal." And here's some quotes from the author of this book, Fielding. "There is a sort of knowledge beyond the power of learning to bestow, and this is to be had in conversation. So necessary is this to understanding the characters of men, that none are more ignorant of them than those learned pedants whose lives have been entirely consumed in colleges and among books. For however exquisitely human nature may have been described by writers, the true practical system can only be learned in the world." And that's also one of the values of having a mother and a father and the family eating dinner together sometimes, is you have conversations. And you learn from that, because like I would often, I would talk to my kids in the morning and breakfast before school if I was home. I mean, usually I'm working, but I had a day off, and sometimes we'd eat as a family on a holiday or something, and I would tease them, just playing. But at first the kids didn't like it, and they would complain, "That's not nice, that's not funny." But then what they came back and told me was they were so used to parrying repartee and having these little conversations with me, teasing them, they tease me back. And they said that they then felt very confident when they were joking around with their friends that they could handle rapid back and forth in a conversation. Like a typical thing in a conversation would be my daughter say, "Daddy, does rice and beans really make you go big and strong?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Then why are you so short?" Okay, lots of things like that would happen in those conversations, and it's good practice for teasing and joking with your friends, okay? All right, so here's Tristram Shandy. Tristram Shandy by Laurence Sterne came out, in about 1767. And what was funny about this book was, it was, the whole beginning of the book is all him talking about all these things that happened before he was born. And of course, the funny thing was, how could he know all that? But it was a very clever book. This guy Laurence Sterne's a pretty clever book. So here's some quotes by Laurence Sterne. "The desire of knowledge, like the thirst of riches, increases ever with the acquisition of it. The only astronomy I was ever interested in was the backslidings and gyrations of Venus. Pre-delivery baptism with a squirt." And then a big insult in England was, "Your mother was a papist," to call somebody a Catholic. Okay, "Digressions incontestably are the sunshine. They are the life, the soul of reading. Take them out of this book, for instance, and you might as well take the book along with them. One cold, eternal winter would reign in every page of it." Yeah, it's like if you take the digressions out of Hamlet, what would it be? Okay, Laurence Sterne continues from Tristram Shandy. "Writing, when properly managed, as you may be sure I think mine is but a different name for conversation. In solitude the mind gains strength and learns to lean upon itself. Loneliness is the mother of wisdom. Endless is the search of truth." Yeah, that's why I think having friends is overrated for kids. Don't get me wrong. You want them to grow up with some friends. That especially becomes more important in high school, that they might continue on with those friends. But when they're young, it's good to have some prolonged times of loneliness, because that forces you to learn how to entertain yourself. And it very often forces a person to learn how to read, and learning how to draw would be a valuable way to spend one's time at that age as well. Okay, so I accidentally skipped a couple pages here. Here is Pride and Prejudice, the great Jane Austen novel. And she's competing for the good man, for Darcy. And here's some of Jane Austen's enthusiastic comments. "Oh, it's only a novel, only some work in which the most thorough knowledge of human nature, the happiest delineation of its varieties, the liveliest effusions of wit and humor are to be conveyed to the world in the best chosen language." Yeah, the real psychology of those days came from novels. "The person, be it gentleman or lady, who has not the pleasure in a good novel must be intolerably stupid. It is such a happiness when good people get together. What is right to be done cannot be done too soon. Angry people are not always wise. My idea of good company, Mr. Eliot, is the company of clever, well-informed people who have a great deal of conversation. That is what I call company. You are mistaken, he said gently. That is not good company. That is the best. A loss of virtue in a female is irretrievable. One false step involves her in endless ruin. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. She was a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. A large income is the best recipe for happiness I ever heard of. So anyways, there's Jane Austen. It's female gossip, and a lot of times too they joke that a person's novel is the photographic negative of their real life. Like, she wrote all these novels about falling in love and getting married, but she herself was not able to acquire a husband, and so she's sad about that. Okay, here's Leo Damrosch, Harvard professor, and he's a pretty bright guy, but he kind of reminds me, my attitude about the humanities is that they're great, they're fantastic. Christian, literature and tradition and history is by far the best in the world, whereas he's a little more of what I call a modern humanities professor. He's a smart guy, and I've read a couple of his books, and they're pretty good, but he's a little bit wimpy and understated. Like, he doesn't have that much confidence in what he's saying. And I don't think that's a sign of being educated. I think that's a sign of being a wimp. If you really like something, you're more enthusiastic about it. But he's still pretty bright. And like I said, the Damrosch book here called The Club was pretty good. Samuel Johnson is the big hero of the book. I think Edward Gibbon is a scumbag. And then I'll show you some of the other people in it. There were some real famous people involved in this club in the 1700s, like dinner parties. There was Edmund Burke, the Member of Parliament from Ireland. There was James Buswell, the biographer of Samuel Johnson. Irish playwrights Oliver Goldsmith and Richard Brinsley Sheridan. The portrait painter in England, Joshua Reynolds. David Garrick, the famous actor. So there's a painting of it. Okay, now here's the book that made Edward Gibbon famous. It's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And Gibbons was a jerk. He tried to blame it on the Catholic Church, okay, which is not the true explanation of it. There's a lot more to it than that. All right, and just here's one book, another book by Damrosch, The Enlightenment Invention of the Modern Self. I don't even like the word enlightenment. The word enlightenment is dishonest. It's deceptive. It's a word chosen by atheists in the 1700s to call themselves the enlightened one, and then say the Middle Ages were the Dark Ages. And also they were trying to take credit for the science, and the science done in those days was done almost entirely by very devout Christian men. So, and I said it before, and it's true. The main place where you see atheism is in humanities, because they don't know anything. The more you know biology and science and chemistry, the more farther along you go in it, the more you realize there has to be a God designing everything. It's way, way, way too complicated. All right, here's a book by this guy right here, Alan Kors. Alan Kors is a better professor than Damrosch. They're both good, but Kors is a little more aggressive, assertive, emotional, smarter. Okay, so he wrote this book here, The Birth of the Modern Mind, Intellectual History, 17th and 18th Centuries. There he is, Alan Kors. The humanities in general have become schools of oppression studies in the very societies that extended more freedom, choice, and bounty than humanity has ever known. It's ridiculous. Everybody wants to come to the West because it's the best. Nobody wants to go to those other third world places. And then they come here, and then people say, oh, it's discriminatory against them. Give me a break. If it really was, they wouldn't come here. Voltaire and the Triumph of the Enlightenment, okay? So he's another guy. A lot of these guys are big fans of Voltaire. Voltaire is a total jerk. Yeah, he's clever and he's funny, but he's a total jerk. Him and the Philosophes led to the big French Rev, 1789 to 1794. Anyways, that's it for today. Hope you found it helpful.